This is going to be a video all about the Mercedes R230 and specifically the wing mirror on this SL55. For some reason it no longer folds in and out electronically, and when it's in the position it should be in, it's loose. So I don't know what's going on in there. One of the things I've been promising myself is a trim removal kit, which we may need to get the door panel off. You don't strictly need one of these, but this was a mere £12 from eBay. I'll leave a link at the end of the video to where we got this from. This door mirror glass should, in theory, just clip in. Try and do it without breaking the glass or any of the clips, because that would be annoying. So I think the easiest way to do is to tilt the mirror forward and then start by undoing the clips at the top. Now remember that your mirror is likely to have wires attached to it, either for the heating, etc. So don't just yank it off. We then undid the side clips here. So let's just undo those wires and have a closer look at this. There are 2 wires and 1 plug. Now those wires, from experience, are often quite difficult to get off. And the way I've found of doing it without breaking the wire is to try and get a flat blade screwdriver underneath the bottom of the plug. Don't, whatever you do, yank it by the wires. It doesn't generally matter which way round these heater wires go, but if you've never done it before and if you're any doubt, just put a little bit of felt tip pen on one side so you know where they came off. This bottom plug here just pulls straight out. It doesn't have any catches on it, but in our case it was in there really tight, and the way we got it out was just with a trim removal tool on either side pushing it. As I say, don't ever pull on the wires to get it out. So if you just needed to get the glass out, there you go, that's the part number there, A313-8454. But we actually need to figure out what is going on with this mechanism back here, and as I suspected, I think I'm going to have to take out the whole door panel and then take the mirror off. There's 4 or 5 stages in getting that door panel out, and the very first stage is to get this piece here off. Now to get it off, you pull it towards you and it's just clipped in with that little white clip there, and then it should just pull up and out of the way, in theory, like so. Okay, so pull it towards you from the top and then up to slide it out. The reason you've got to take the whole door panel off is to reveal those 3 screws. You can just see the top one there, and the bottom 2 are tucked down behind there, and then you're going to need to unplug everything from the mirror. Once you've got that piece of trim off, the next thing is to move this like so, and it should just pull off. There we go. Once you've taken that piece of trim off, there's a little torque screw down there, which I believe is a T20. Now I'm going to put a neodymium magnet on my screwdriver, because it's highly likely that when you undo that bolt, it'll fall into the door. Now that doesn't matter because you'll be taking the door pan off anyway, but if you don't want to drop that bolt, stick a magnet on your screwdriver like that. Next up, we're going to whip off this aluminium trim panel. Now there's 6 torque screws, and you're going to need, I think that's a T15 screwdriver there to get that off. We bought a set of these from Screwfix a little while ago. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's one right at the bottom there, 6. They should just come straight out. Now once you've got all of those 6 little stainless steel torque screws out, this trim piece should just pull straight off. The best place to start popping off the trim clips is at the bottom of the door here. It does make a horrible snapping sound when you are undoing these clips, but that is just the poppers popping. In theory, once you've popped all the poppers, you just need to pull the door towards you and yank it up, and that should get that door panel off. It's not going to come off completely because there's a whole load of wires attached to it, both from the door release and also the wing mirror. It does take quite a bit of force to get this off, especially if yours has never come off before. So I've just started at this corner here and lifted it up. It'll be fun getting that back on. Eventually you will get to this stage here, and the first thing you need to do is disconnect this door catch mechanism here. That normally just unhooks. If you've unhooked it, that will just clip out from there. And then you've got a whole load of plugs here to undo. In my particular case, I'm only taking the mirror off. I don't need to detach the whole door card, so I'm only going to unplug these two plugs here. And I believe that they're just pulled straight out plugs, and they only go in one way, so you can't mess it up. But the black one is at the top, the white one is at the bottom. Now those screws that hold the mirror in didn't want to come out with my Torx screwdriver. I felt like I was going to round it off, so I just used a 020 from this kit here with a socket set, and that came out no problem. There are rubber sort of waterproof mounts there, so this screw came out with that. Make sure you don't lose them. And the other thing, which is obvious and goes without saying, is when you take the final screw out, make sure you're holding the mirror with your hand, otherwise it will fall down and break. Got that last screw out, this will just come off in your hand like that. I'm just going to show you exactly how this door attaches, sorry, how this door card or panel attaches to the door. These two pieces here have these grooves that fit in there, which is why you need to pull the door up to get it off. And this piece here also has that groove in there that fits in that hole, which is why you once again have to pull the door card up to get it off. You can see down here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those red clips. Having had a quick look at that mirror mechanism, I don't think it's going to be a 5-minute job to fix it, so I'm going to unplug these plugs from here and actually take the door card off and put it in the car while I lock the garage up. And these plugs here do only fit in one way, I believe, but once again, always take a photograph if you're taking anything to pieces. Just remind yourself of how everything goes. These are the plugs here. You can see they're all different apart from this blue and white one, and Mercedes have very kindly put a blue dot here, a white dot where those go. So we're going to take out these 3 retaining screws here, and that hopefully should allow us to take this whole mechanism out. We're going to take the mirror tilt motor out. It's held in with these 3 screws here. Once you've taken out these 3 Torx screws here, the mirror will be, or mirror motor I should say, will be loose, and you just need to unplug it there. It's quite tricky to get a finger in there, so you might be better off starting off with a flat blade screwdriver, and then it should just pop out like so. So once again, there are no clips or anything, it is just a push fit on that plug. Part number of the motor there, should you ever need to replace just that, A314-1226 A102. And I think there'll be a right and a left. This says rechts on it, which is right in German. Now, with the wing mirror in that position there, i.e. if it was folded out, you should just be able to pull this casing and it should slide straight off. When you take this out, try not to bend this too much, because that plug there slides into that fitting there, so you're going to be pulling it straight back. You'll be able to just wiggle that off like so. And then if you needed to replace the indicator light, you would undo these 2 screws here, and that will just pop straight out. It's just plugged in there. We don't need to replace the indicator light, so we're not going to bother doing that. I'm going to take these wires out now. They're routed in a very specific way, so just make a note of how this wire is all routed. This one here twists around this way, comes off and out. Before we can take this wire out, we're going to unplug this, and this, I assume, is the power to the motor. So one of the first things we're going to do is put some power across those 2 terminals and check whether this motor is actually still working. That might account for why it's not folding in if the motor itself is. These wires are just looped around until you get to this fitting here. To get this fitting here out, you need to turn this over and press a little tab down that hole, And then that will release this fitting here. You can see the little tab there. You just need to press that in. These 3 screws came out without any drama. Just before I go through the rigmarole of taking that clip off and having to compress the spring, etc., I'm actually going to try putting some power across those 2 terminals there, because it may be something really simple like the motor's not getting any power, and that's why it's not clicking in the right position. And as soon as we put power, everything will sort itself out, and then all we need to do is figure out why the motor's not getting any power. Is it because it's got a broken wire here? Is it a fuse somewhere down the line? So let's just get 12 volts across there and see what happens. We're a little bit Heath Robinson, but I want to know which of these plugs is carrying the power to that motor. So I've just hooked up a light bulb, and I've ascertained that if I touch that terminal there, the light bulb lights up. So that is one of the terminals there. And if I swap that plug from one socket to the other socket, we find that the neighboring terminal here is the one that lights up the bulb. Incidentally, that little test also tells me that those wires leading from that plug to that plug here are absolutely fine. Sometimes you get little breaks in the wires as the wing mirror bends in and out, the wire breaks, but that's not the case here. Ascertained which is carrying the power. We can plug this in and just put power to this plug here and see if we can get that motor to move. Okay, once again, a little bit Heath Robinson. I've just used 2 staples to plug into those sockets there. I've attached the end of those plugs now to a car charger, which is 12 volts. When I switch this on here, you'd expect to see some movement. Nothing. When I did it on the VW Transporter, it did matter which way around you connected the power to the motor. So I've just swapped those 2 round. I'm going to try that again. Nothing. I'm now about to go beyond the point of no return and try and take that clip out, and when I do, that metal plate will fly up and I'll be able to take this off. What I'm going to do is put just a drop of oil on there to help that slide out. So using this Heath Robinson arrangement here, having a big thick washer there with a section cut out, I'm now able to push that clip out, and when I do so, at the other end here, the whole thing should spring to pieces. And all I have to do now is loosen off that nut. Remember how this all comes out. There's a plastic bush, and then there's that washer, and then there's that super duper spring. Then this should, in theory, lift out. In case there is anybody out there that's ever going to try this job, I'm just going to let you know exactly how we did it. We started off with a 75mm M6 bolt. Then we threaded on an M6 washer, which we got from Screwfix. And then we put on a penny washer, M1225 penny washer from Toolstation. And then the bottom washer had to be slightly smaller. That is an M8 washer from Screwfix. And then we finished everything off with a M6 nut. Here is the order of events. You put the small washer on first, then the big washer, and then thread the bolt through. And then you just need to, you can see the end of the bolt there, put the other washer on. Now this other washer got bent with the force of the spring. It didn't start off that shape. That goes in first, and then you just very loosely put that on. And to finish it off, we're going to slide in this little piece here that we made up, which compresses the spring and gives us enough room to get the clip out. Now we are left with this, which should just lift over. I think I can see why this was a bit loose, and it's because that piece of metal has snapped off there. Don't know if that's something that we can actually repair, doubt it. Next up, I'm just going to take this to pieces. That top plastic bit just clips on and have a look and see what's underneath. It's perhaps worth mentioning that this is locked in place by this gear here. So if your mirror is not folding in to the right position or sitting at the right position, and when it's folded out, you can adjust that by actually moving this round. So if you take the thing to pieces and everything's correct as it should be, make sure you take a photograph so you know exactly how that edge lines up with one of these grooves. The problems I had was when the mirror was folded out, it was loose, and that was because somehow that cog seems to have moved and it's no longer, that tooth was no longer locking in there. So I've just taken that out and moved it around a few notches, and now it locks in the right place, and that there is up against there, so it snaps into place when it's in the right place. It's always worth checking Mercedes for the cost of parts. Sometimes it works out cheaper. This part here, part number 10 on the diagram, is still available, but it costs £233 plus VAT. I've mentioned this many times, I'll mention it many times again. mb-tilecatalogue.info is where you can get part numbers for all your Mercedes. So we're not going to be getting that from Mercedes, it's too expensive. Stop is eBay. Now you can buy these wing mirrors second hand, but obviously they're colour coded to the car. So there's one for sale here, £120 plus £12.50 postage, but it's white and you'd have to take it all to pieces to get the actual motor mechanism out. What I'm going to do is go along to our friends in Latvia and buy a couple of complete units, right and left, and hopefully be able to fit them. The left-hand side mirror is actually really creaky for some reason, so we might just swap them both out and then we'll have a spare. But that's just going to cost me just over £100, and it looks like the whole spring mechanism is already built in integral to that, so I don't have to be taking anything to pieces. What I have to do is figure out how to separate this metal bit from the plastic casing without breaking the plastic casing, because those bits that I've just bought come with all of this integrated. I'm going to put this whole thing back together because it could be several weeks before my new motor or this bit arrives from Latvia. Putting this back together is just the reverse of taking apart, and the only difficult thing is going to be compressing that spring down like that far enough so that you can get this locking pin in. When it comes to putting the thing back together again, my 75mm bolt isn't going to be long enough because the spring has expanded. Now I could just go out and get an 80mm bolt or longer bolt and cut it down, but what I'm going to try and do is compress this spring and then lock it in the compressed state with 2 cable ties, put the whole thing back together, and then just snip the cable ties when the clip is in. This threaded rod here is just one of the rods from a bearing press kit that I've used on previous videos, and the advantage is it's got ball bearings here, so it's very easy to tighten these things down, but you could just use a bolt through there with a couple of big washers. That would do the same thing. Tighten that down and compress that spring nice and safely. We're just going to pull these cable ties tight. Those cable ties tight. It just remains to be seen whether they're strong enough to hold that spring. Eventually, with enough cable ties, you'll get to this situation here where the spring is compressed, and you should just be able to tap that in without too many problems. You'll get to this stage where we've tapped that in, and we just need to cut these cable ties, and hopefully they won't get jammed in there. That's the last cable tie cut. And hopefully that should just come out. It can be quite fiddly getting this casing on. Make sure that you get these silver bits here on top of the black bits, and also that these wires are routed round this way and not at the top, because it's easy to get those wires caught under the hole there. And then at the very end here, you might just have to, with a plastic trim tool, just lever that up slightly so that you can clear those little catches. Next up, we're just going to put the tilt motor back in. Now this plug is quite tight there, so my advice would be to plug that in first before you start trying to tighten any screws down. Back down at the garage, and we're just going to finish this video by whipping that door panel back on. First of all, we'll start by attaching the mirror. When you're putting this mirror back on, there is some leeway and tiny bit of movement, so make sure that the mirror is actually lined up against the door here. And also, it's a good habit to get into to tighten these up in a crisscross pattern. Don't just tighten one of them up, otherwise you'll find that the mirror's not going to sit flush on the door. Wires just plug in black to black and then white to white. There's a white dot just there, and which way around it goes. Just before we put this door card on, it's worth mentioning that these clips have little gaskets on them, okay, and sometimes when you take the door card off, the gaskets will end up on the clip, and at other times it'll end up on the door. There's where some glue is there, and it's very easy to either drop these when you take the door card off or lose them. You come to plug the door wires in, they're all color coded and they only fit in one way, so you shouldn't have any problems with that. Put the door card on, line up that button first, and then connect in this hook. And then it should just be a matter of lining up these things, snapping everything back into place. Next up, I'm just going to put this screw in here until it bites. I'm not going to tighten it all the way, just until it bites, and then I'm going to go around and click in all the clips. You just need to give them a hard bash with the palm of your hand. All clipped in, you can then go in and tighten that up. Once again, you do not need to over tighten these screws. You're screwing into plastic. Put this bit in. The way we took it off was with the A of the airbag pointing down towards the ground. I'm sure it doesn't make that much difference. And then twist it around to lock it in. A piece of trim hooks in there like that, and then it should just snap in place like so. Before you put the aluminium piece of trim on, make sure that that little button there is in that hole like so. And when you come to put on this silver aluminium panel here, it can be quite difficult to line up. I always start with the bottom screw first, because that's the hardest one, and then work my way up. Just put them all in loosely and then tighten them up. And the other thing to bear in mind is that this seal here needs to go on the outside of that plate, like so. That will stop your car from leaking, hopefully. All we've got to do is just connect this mirror up. Got those wires connected. It should just be a matter of clipping this in. So let's just try starting this car, seeing what kind of error messages, if any, we get. To get some fuel. Let's see if our mirror still works. Which it does. And now it's sitting in the right place and it's nice and firm, so we just need to drive around, charge our battery up a little bit and get some fuel maybe. And that is job done. Trim kit from eBay, just $12.99 delivered, incredibly cheap. Already got a Torx screwdriver set. You can get them from the tool station, just £10.69 for a set. You'll need 3 of those to do that door wing mirror.